The Wisconsin Badgers fans are whining once again. It shouldn't be surprising, but we're going to focus on the National Signing Day recruits on the defensive side of ball for the Minnesota Golden Gophers.
You are Locked On Golden Gophers.
No matter what we're going to do here, we're just going to keep rowing.
Your daily podcast on the Minnesota Golden Gophers.
However it turns out, we're just going to keep rowing.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
We're just going to keep rowing, and keep rowing.
You're listening to Locked On Golden Gophers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name's Kane Rob, host of the podcast, former collegiate football video coordinator and recruiting assistant, here to talk Golden Gophers with you each and every day of the week, Monday through Friday. Today, we are talking about the National Signing Day recruits on the defensive side of ball. Yesterday's show came out a little later in the day. And when I say a little later, I mean it came out more towards the nighttime. So be sure to give the offensive side of ball episode a look as well. 2 episodes in one day, basically, here at Locked On Golden Gophers. Thank you for listening. Thank you for following. Follow wherever you get your podcast at Locked On Golden Gophers. And be sure to hit subscribe on YouTube, where we're building the community. We're getting all those questions in. We're talking, we're chatting, we're letting it all hang out in the comments below. So definitely hit subscribe. Let me know your thoughts on the guys that you're excited for in this class, on your thoughts on the Wisconsin drama, if you really need to get it off your chest. But now is the time, down in the comments below. Now, like I said, we're back at it again. We're diving into the defensive players from signing day. We're also going to talk about the piece of National Signing Day presser that apparently blew up and has Wisconsin fans in their feelings to close the show. So definitely stick around for that one. But let's get into these players. Now, the defensive additions, we're going to talk about the scholarship players, then the transfers, and then the walk-ons as well. First up, we have Martin Owusu from Minnesota, played at Prior Lake High School, 3-star guy on the defensive line. 4th ranked player in Minnesota. In 2022, he took a major leap. He had 45 tackles, 7 sacks, and 9 tackles for loss. He was a huge spark and a connector for this class, which was extremely present on social media if you were following along with that. But also, it was stated by Coach Fleck in the presser as well. Now, he is one of the few players that Wisconsin tried to pull away in the final hours before National Signing Day. And this is what spurred some UW fans to get in their feelings following this clip right here from Coach Fleck.
Martin Owusu, defensive line, Prior Lake High School here in Minnesota. He's enrolling early, had over 30 Division I offers, ranked at the top 5 player in the state of Minnesota. Wisconsin even kind of came in, tried to flip him early. Showed me all the text messages of them doing everything they can to negative recruit to flip us, and it didn't work. So we axed it. So true connector to the class. That's what's great. You get to see all the text messages. That's the best part of negative recruiting. You get to see all these grown men negative recruit and text messages. Beautiful. And appreciate everybody sharing those with us, because we don't negative recruit. And it's really interesting to see that. Another example of a kid who really wanted to play for Minnesota. And again, I can say that over and over. I sound like a broken record already, but that's true. And in 6 years, that's your whole goal. You either get to that point, or you're probably not the next head coach here. You're probably on your way somewhere else. You've got to make the state of Minnesota grow and work. And with this addition of these guys from the state of Minnesota, I feel really good about the future of where we are in this state. But by far, this was the best talent, in my opinion, in the last 6 years, respectively speaking, across the board. And Martin was a huge connector to this class. The minute he recruited, our class took off. He's got a great personality. He's infectious. He's got great twitch, a high motor, he's long, and he's going to help us on the D-line. So we're excited about that.
Now, looking past the drama, I'm more excited about Martin Owusu, the player he is, the guy he is on and off the field. Great energy, great vibes. Overall, I'm excited for the leadership that he will bring, and also that he'll develop with this program, and also just that work ethic that he had in high school and hopefully will continue here with the Gophers. He made huge strides in high school, and I believe if that work ethic carries over to college, to this D1 Big Ten level football, then he can be a dude for the Gophers in time. Now, another player on the defensive line that we have to talk about is Theoren Randall. He's from Texas, 3-star kid, defensive lineman. Texas football sending another one to the Gophers, and I am here for it. Absolutely. Love the Texas kids. They play ball out there. And in the last 2 seasons, he's had 73 tackles, 18 tackles for loss, and 7 sacks. Now, we need more pressure. We know that. As a Minnesota defensive unit, the Gophers needed more pressure generated, and they need to continue to strive for that. It is an area of need. I think that these two that I've just mentioned, they might play more on the interior, but still creating that pressure will be huge. And Theoren Randall brings that element. He has the size, he has the length, he has the strength to help her early if it all clicks. And Coach Fleck said that in his presser as well. But it has to all kind of, it depends on how things click, how things get picked up, and how people show out and earn it in the fall camp. And I believe that he will be coming in the fall. So he won't be an early enrollee, but he is a high upside guy. And Fleck called him one of the most talented players in this class. Now, the next player we're going to talk about continues with that pressure theme, and that is Carter Menz. He's an edge rusher, 3-star kid from North Dakota, the #1 player in the state of North Dakota. He has a body frame that reminds Coach Fleck of a young Carter Coughlin. That'll pique interest from the fans because we all know Carter Coughlin balled out, got drafted late, but he was a key player for the Minnesota Golden Gophers. Now, Carter Menz is twitchy. He's long. He had 105 tackles and over 22 sacks in the last 2 years in North Dakota. He has great power to speed and speed to power, which is pertinent as an edge rusher. It's a huge strength, a huge trait that you need to be an effective pass rusher. So that will be a great thing for Carter Menz. And it is a position of great need for Minnesota, like we mentioned. Now, the next player that we have to talk about is Matt Kingsbury, linebacker from Illinois, 3-star kid, super smart player. As mentioned by Coach Fleck, very cerebral, emotional intelligence, on the field IQ, all of that. And so you love to add those type of guys to the room. He's one of the latest additions to the team and one of the later signees of this class. And Coach Fleck called him a throwback player and said, think about like Mariano Sorimarin, that type of player. You love to hear it. I mean, Mariano was a key guy, great charisma, great leader, high IQ. If that's what he brings and that's what he can develop into or towards that type of linebacker, absolutely music to the ears when it comes to Gophers fans. Now, next player that we got to talk about on the defensive side is Alex Elliott from Minnesota. He's a linebacker, 3-star kid, very versatile. He had 4 rushing touchdowns for his team. I believe he played at Hutchinson. So 4 rushing touchdowns, but also mainly on the defensive side of ball, had 104 tackles and 3 interceptions on a state runner-up team. Now, 104 tackles in a season is no joke. That's legit. Like, I don't care what level you're playing at. It is difficult to crack 100 tackles in a single season, no matter the level of caliber of play you are playing. So 104 tackles in a season, no joke. Like I said, he could be a fun player long-term in the program after going through the strength program, after developing with these coaches, after putting the time in. He is a player that could definitely be a staple Gopher that you are typically used to seeing, those guys that maybe were under recruited and they grow into massive roles. I think Alex Elliott could definitely play into that. Next player we have to talk about is Garrison Monroe from Shakopee High School, 3-star guy, Minnesota player, DB. He can play corner, he can play safety, but Coach Fleck said that he's projected as more of a safety type player for the Minnesota Gophers. He showed out at camps. He went to more and more camps throughout his process, throughout the off seasons, and the coaches liked him more and more every time they were around him. He grew on them more and more every time they were exposed to him, and as a player on the field and off the field. He's a top player in the state. I believe he was the 6th overall player in the state of Minnesota. So high upside guy, definitely, in my opinion, slightly under-recruited, and you love to see another local kid staying here. I look forward to seeing what Garrison Monroe brings to the team. Now, the next Gopher we have to talk about is my guy, Zaquan Bryan. If y'all listen to the show, you already know that Quan is my guy. He's a great dude on and off the field, absolute baller that did it all for his high school team and won back-to-back state championships in the the state of Georgia. Now, he'll be coming to play the cornerback position for the Gophers, but he did it all in high school. He played some snaps in the backfield, played receiver and was one of the best receivers in the state, and also played defensive back. Look, Quan can lay the smack down. This dude, I'm talking heavy hitter, and he's going to be a fun player to watch, but I think that the skills and the talent that he brought to the receiver position will only help him as that cornerback position, being able to not only have the hands to come down with interceptions and maybe big returns, but just the intellect of knowing what receivers are looking to do and having the field sense to be in his opponent's head. It's going to go a long ways, especially for a guy who was one of the top receivers in the state as well. Heavy, talented kid, one of the best athletes in the class. Coach Fleck even said he might be the best athlete in this entire class. And let's listen to the high praise that Coach Fleck had to say about him at the presser.
Quan Bryant, maybe one of the best athletes in this entire class. Defensive back from Savannah, Georgia, Benedictine Military School. Back-to-back state champion, which is absolutely critical. You know, when we're talking about winning championships here, as we continue to strive to do that, we've been really close over the last few years. But you continue to bring in state champions that know how to be able to finish and get that done. That's going to be critical for us. But this guy plays running back, wide receiver, corner. He's one of those young players that you feel like, even though he's coming in the summer, he has ability to maybe help us as a freshman because he is so dynamic. Never comes off the field. Dad Anthony is just so proud of him. You know, when I went to his game, I got a chance to go to one of the state playoff games, and I got paraded around. I never knew so many people in Savannah, Georgia, know anything about Minnesota football. Everywhere I went, packed stadium, row the boat, Skyima, go Gophers, in that order. It was done right. I was introduced to hundreds of people that all can't wait to be Gophers. The only problem is, you know, they were all bundled up, and it was 58 degrees at night for the high school game, and they look like it's about below zero. So we're going to have to get everybody down there in Savannah some heated vests and socks, and especially his family. But ran a 10.900 meters. You know, this is the 3-4A player of the year in the state of Georgia. So we're excited to have Zaquan and his family join us.
So that's Quan. It's the only sole cornerback prospect that signed in this signing class. So he'll be an intriguing one as well. And the next guy we have to talk about is the final high school scholarship player of National Signing Day, which was Kerry Brown. From Florida. He's a safety prospect, 3-star guy, 76 tackles, 11 tackles for loss, over 225 tackles in his 3 seasons of high school football. Now, he had 5 pass breakups and 3 forced fumbles as well. And the thing that you love is he is an early enrollee player. So he's coming, he can play corner, he can play safety, he can play in the nickel. So we'll see how they use him, if they use him more versatility, if they have him look more in that nickel role like we saw from Flip Dixon, or if they have him play that true safety. We'll see how he develops, but he has the talent and the ability to play all over the field. And Coach Fleck said, think about like a Justice Harris, but a little bit bigger, a little bit longer, a little bit taller. Now, Justice Harris was a dog, and that means Kerry Brown has that dog in him. I'm excited for that. I love guys that just, they got that extra swagger, that extra oomph, that extra drive. And that is what Kerry Brown brings. That's what Zaquan Bryant brings. And that's what a lot of these Gophers bring. So get excited. This class, even though it might not pop or jump off the page to you as far as like, oh, well, it's not in the top 20. I don't want to hear that. This class holds a lot of potential upside, and it holds a lot of guys that are dogs, that are grinders, that work hard and want to get better. They push themselves consistently, and if that carries over, it doesn't matter if you're 3-star, 4-star, 2-star, whatever. If you have that drive and you have that dog in you, you can be developed and you can get even better. And that's what we're looking for. So looking forward to this class overall. Now we have to talk about the transfers as well. The first being Chris Collins, an edge rusher from North Carolina for the Tar Heels, 6'4", 245 pounds. I believe he has 1 year of eligibility left, but it could be 2. I could be wrong on that one. He had 20 tackles last year with 1 tackle for loss, and he had 29 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, and 2.5 sacks in 2021. So he has the ability. He has the speed, the quick get off, a little bit of bend in him. He played over 1,000 snaps for the Tar Heels, and he's coming into a room that really needs to generate pressure, as we've talked about. So the opportunity could be there for him, and I wish nothing but the best for him. He is all 3 of the transfers will be here early enrolled in the spring, I believe. So that way they will be here for spring ball starting in January, where they'll get into the strength and conditioning programs. It'll be great. Chris Collins will be a fantastic addition, and I look forward to what he brings to this team. The next guy we have to talk about is Jack Henderson, defensive back from southeastern Louisiana, 6'2", 205 pounds. I believe he has 2 years of eligibility left. Again, the eligibility, it's all still a little bit wonky coming out of COVID, but we're starting to get back towards more normalcy. Now, he led his team in 2022 with 90 tackles, 55 solo, and 7 tackles for loss. Now, the position on 247 or on 3 or whatever you're looking at probably states safety, but after hearing some of the interviews that he has had and hearing Coach Fleck in the presser, it looks like he'll probably be playing or be looking to play that nickel position that Flip Dixon had left. And I believe he'll likely have the fast track or the first looks on that role from what I've heard and seen. So he's an exciting player. Again, he had 2 sacks and 2 interceptions last year as well with those 90 tackles. He was named first team All Southland Conference, and he was one of the highest graded FCS D-backs in the entire country. That's exciting. I mean, the FCS is no slouch. It's not the Power 5, but there are guys who have Power 5 capability. We've seen that firsthand from guys like Jack Gibbons who come over and still ball out in the Big Ten. So Jack Henderson is somebody that I am really intrigued by in this class and looking forward to seeing what he does. Now, Ryan Selig, I think I'm saying his last name wrong. I will definitely have it corrected by the time we hit spring ball. So bear with me. I apologize, Ryan, if I said it wrong, but Western Michigan transfer, 6'3", 210. I believe he has 1 year of eligibility left. He had 73 tackles, 5.5 tackles for loss, and 1.5 sacks in 2022. He played a heavy amount in his junior and senior seasons with Western Michigan. He creates turnovers, and that's what you love to see, especially from that linebacker position, being able to force turnovers. It's a huge asset, and I do believe that he'll probably have the inside track or inside first looks at the middle linebacker position, the Mike position, playing alongside Cody Lindenberg. Now, like I've said, there are some young guys from last year's class that I think will get looks and have opportunities heading into next year. You're talking name of all names, Maverick Baranowski, Tyler Stolsky, some of the guys to be on the lookout for, some of these true freshmen maybe as well. But Ryan Selig is a guy that I think will get a lot of time, will get a lot of looks, and be a heavy contributor for this team. But he has to earn it. Like I said, he'll still have to earn that spot, but he could be playing right there next to Cody Lindenberg next season. Now we're going to close off with some walk-ons. I know this segment's a little bit longer, but there are a lot of players to talk about. So walk-on, we're going to talk about Jackson Powers, Wisconsin DB, really showed his drive at camps and traveled all over the country to be in front of the Gophers coaches. Really wanted to be here for the Minnesota Golden Gophers and will be coming to his dream program. Won a state championship with Maple Grove. Looking forward to it. Xander Rockow from Wisconsin. Sorry, I just said he won a state championship with Maple Grove, which is true, but I also say he was from Wisconsin, which isn't true. He's from Minnesota. So correction on that one. But Xander Rockow is from Wisconsin. Linebacker, tough as nails, played all over, played linebacker, running back, some defensive tackle. He's going to start out as the linebacker for the Gophers. We'll see where he fits best. He won a state championship in Wisconsin, and he set the state championship record in this single game with rushing yards with over 230 or over 250 in rushing yards. He's an athlete. He's a freak, and he's fun to have on this Gophers roster. You've also got Drew Wilson from Wisconsin heading over this way, a linebacker, and then Ethan Carrier from Detroit Lakes, Minnesota, also a defensive back heading to the Minnesota Golden Gophers, and his brother in the 24 class is also committed with the Gophers. So that's all the players, and we've dove into that, but who are players that could maybe see some early playing time? Who has the highest upside? Who are players that intrigue me? That's what's coming up next. But first, we got to talk about our friends over at BetOnline. BetOnline is where the game starts, and you absolutely need to check out BetOnline for the latest and greatest when it comes to sports, trends, and actions. More lines, more odds, more props than ever before. And if you're looking for any sport, they have it for you over at BetOnline. Golf, hockey, croquet. You can find all these different types of sports over at BetOnline, and they'll have the latest odds for you that you absolutely do not want to miss out when you're going to make your bets. Check out BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, so we're going to talk about who we could see maybe playing early in this class. But first, thank you for listening to Locked On Golden Gophers and making us your first listen when it comes to Gophers daily sports. I'm excited to be back at it. I'm back from the warm weather, back in the cold weather. It's like -11 outside right now. I was used to the 80s over this last week, so it's been a stressful time over these last couple days, but we're back. We're back home in the homeland, the motherland, the cold land. And we're talking about this defensive side of the National Signing Day class. Now, who are some players that I think would play early in this class? Obviously, all of the transfers are the first answers there. I think Ryan and Jack have the inside track to starting positions potentially right away in the spring. And Chris Collins could be on that as well, being as we needed edge presence, and the defensive line tends to rotate a lot in this system. So he definitely could try to work his way into maybe the first or second line of those defensive edge rushers. If he can generate consistent pressure, he'll find himself into a lot of opportunities. So all three of those transfers, I think, could see some early playing time. Now, when it comes to the true freshmen, I think there's only two really that could maybe see early playing time. We heard it from Coach Fleck in the clip that I played earlier. Zaquan Bryan, he's an absolute athlete, possibly the best talent in this true freshman class when it comes to natural athletic ability. Coach Fleck said that himself, but he's a worker. He has a lot. He just gets after it, folks. Hard hitter, brings it on the field, but there's a lot of opportunity in that DB room potentially to be had. Now, there's a lot of experience in there as well. You've got Beanie Bishop back. You've got Ryan Stapp back. You've got Henderson, who I just mentioned is coming in as a transfer. And so you've got Justin Wally back. You've got Newbin back. There are a lot of guys coming back, bringing experience, but you've still got to fill that nickel role. You got to fill one of the outside roles, one of the safety roles. There's a whole lot to still be filled in this room. And maybe it's not a full-time thing. Maybe it's not this player is going to be outside on every snap. Maybe they play a rotation of outside corners, and maybe Zaquan is one of the guys that gets those. Maybe Tariq Watson from last year's class is someone. Rylan Kelly. Who knows? But Zaquan Bryan, depending on how quickly he picks up the playbook in the system, he could push for earlier time if he continues to work his tail off. Now, Theoren Randall is the other true freshman that I think maybe could get some time early. He has the size, and with the rotation of the defensive line, which we've talked about here with Chris Collins as well, we play a lot of guys on that defensive line, on the inside and the outside, and in a rotation, depending on the packages, depending on the looks. And so Theoren Randall could definitely possibly see opportunities if he comes in ready to go, he picks it up real quick, and he shows that natural talent that he showed in Texas. He could see some early opportunities. He will have competition with guys like Devin Eastern, who, look, I'm still on the Devin Eastern train. You can't get me off of it. I think he is going to be an absolute stud for this team. You've also got Anthony Smith out on the edge, who is coming up through the system. You've got Trill Carter back. You've got Kyler Baugh back. So there's still a lot of talent on this defensive line, and it will be interesting to see how it all works out moving forward. Now, when it comes to highest upside players, I do believe Quan has some of the highest upside, being the athletic freak he is, having that wide receiver mentality as well, which should help. But outside of him, I think Carter Menz has some of the highest upside in this class when it comes to the ability. He could be an absolute freak on the edge, similar to what we saw from Carter Coughlin. And he showed that at the North Dakota level, the #1 player in the state. And I'm super excited to see what he can do. I think it will take maybe a year, maybe 2 years to get him up to that top-notch caliber. But once he is there, man, look out, because it could be scary. So Carter Menz, definitely one of the highest upsides in this class, in my opinion. Now, lastly, players that intrigue me in this class. The first, Jack Henderson. Jack Henderson, even though he's a transfer, I'm definitely intrigued by him. He balled out at the FCS level. I think he's a player that will translate at the FBS Big Ten level, and I think he'll thrive in that nickel role. If he really works, if he really puts it together, I think he could be a real player for this Gophers team that needs someone to step into that role. And dude balls out. So he's really exciting for me. He's probably one of the players that intrigues me most. Another one is Martin Owusu as well. I talked about the leadership and the presence that he has. I think he could be a very impactful leader for this team in his junior year, in his senior year, and how he develops through the program will go a long ways. But like I said, he has a massive work ethic. I think he caught a lot of the 247 analysts by surprise by his quick, rapid progress from junior year to senior year. I saw all the effort he was putting in. I saw the work he was putting in based on looking at some of the work he was doing with his trainers, seeing the different workouts and things like all of that adds up. And it showed in his senior season where he got the offer over the offseason, but also where he continued to ball out. And I think if he continues to have that drive and that work, he could be a major player and then bring that presence that you just can't coach. So I think that Martin Owusu is extremely intriguing for this team. And then the last one I want to bring up is one that doesn't have a scholarship, but I think he could earn one in due time, and that is Xander Rockow. Xander Rockow is an athletic freak. Like, he showed that. He set a single game record in rushing in the state championship. Like, he just balls out when it needs to happen. Now, he lays a smackdown on folks. He's a linebacker. He's played defensive tackle with a linebacker built. Like, he'll do whatever it takes for his team to win. And that is massive. And that is, I mean, even the way Coach Fleck talked about him, it was intriguing. It was special. And he's a player that I think, don't be surprised if in 3 years you hear that he's on scholarship and starting for the Gophers. Like, that's the type of kid that he comes off as, and I'm really excited to see how he grows with this program. Now, like I said, in that bunch, Martin Owusu, we're going to talk about Martin Owusu a little bit deeper coming up next, because we got to talk about the drama that stemmed from yesterday's signing day that Wisconsin fans had just all up in their feelings. Like, cue Drake in my feelings, because that's what Wisconsin fans were doing yesterday. We're going to talk about it a little bit more coming up next. All right, so let's talk about this, because there was some Wisconsin Gophers drama on National Signing Day, a rivalry that is up there as one of the best in the entire country. And this is why, because there's drama, there's bad blood between the fans, there's constant talk of, the axe and the renewed rivalry of sorts that has definitely come into play over the last few years. So what is it all about? Well, Martin Owusu was one of multiple players that Wisconsin tried to reach out to and offered the day before signing day to try and flip. Like, that right there already tells you that Wisconsin was in conversations with these guys. But what Coach Fleck brought up in the clip that we listened to earlier in the show was saying that Wisconsin was negative recruiting Minnesota. What does that mean? Folks are like, what is negative recruiting? It's basically you're bashing Minnesota. When you're talking to the recruit, you're bashing, oh, well, Minnesota doesn't do this, or you won't do good in Minnesota because of this, but like trash talking or bashing another program rather than focusing on why the kid would be a good fit in your program. And really, Coach Fleck calling it out just showed that what these coaches are saying to recruits could come to light if you don't do it in the right manner. And that's kind of what presented itself here. Now, everybody's like, well, everybody does negative recruiting. No, that's not true. Not everyone does it. Not everyone bashes other programs. That's not true at all. Whether you want to believe it or not, I've worked in the college space, and I worked for a program that one of the staples was completely against bashing, was completely against negative recruiting, and was solely focused on what the player could be within our program. And that's what Coach Fleck says that their message is as well. I don't know. I'm not in those meetings. I'm not behind those closed doors. But if he's willing to call it out like this in a public forum, there would be maybe other players he's recruited that if that had happened would have came to light, which we didn't see any of that really in the immediate aftermath. But, on top of it, it happened. Like, Badgers fans, get out of your feelings. It happened. There's nothing illegal against it. It's not an illegal tactic. It's not like you can't do that. It's just maybe frowned upon. And maybe some coaches don't agree with that type of recruiting. It is what it is. It makes you look a little grimy when you're sitting there bashing other schools as opposed to focusing on yours. But I mean, your mascot is in the skunk family, so it's nothing new. It stinks. You stink. Like, it is what it is. Now, as much as I like to rib the Badgers, and in the end, like, we're rivals. It happens, but it didn't need to be blown up as much as it was. And it really wasn't worth all of the drama that came from it. Now, one thing I will say is, why would Coach Fleck lie about it? Like, lying, saying, well, a prospect showed me the text messages and you were negative recruiting, blah, 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 blah. If that wasn't true, why would he lie about it? Because it would only damage the relationship between said prospect, said commit, and Coach Fleck. But backing that player and talking about how even through the negative recruiting, like, he has that player's back, and talking about the importance that that player, Martin Owusu, has to the Gophers and what he's done for them. And then he goes on to stress the positives of what Martin Owusu brings. That just shows even more how he's backing that player. And it's more logical to see that, yes, it probably happened. And given that context, it's likely true. But even if it is true, it doesn't mean that Coach Fickell knew about it. I mean, the coach that did it, no coach was named in this instance, but Coach Fickell would not have been the coach likely contacting Martin Owusu. He wouldn't have been the recruiting coach reaching out, as he is the head honcho. If he's reaching out directly, it's probably to whoever their number one person on the board, number two person on the board is, because he is highly locked in the day before on making sure said players are headed their way or doing what he can to try to get those players his way. So regardless of if another coach did it at Wisconsin, it likely wasn't Coach Fickell. So again, it's all blowing up a little more than it needs to. But again, Wisconsin fans whining seems like a staple. That's going to do it for us today on Locked On Golden Gophers. Just enjoy that the rivalry is renewed, that the axe is still in Minnesota, and I'm sure there will be more complaints back and forth between Gophers fans and Badgers fans, as it is a normal thing. It is a rivalry, just like Vikings and Packers. You're going to get the ribbing back and forth, so own it. That's going to do it for us. Like I said, thank you for listening. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube as we continue to talk about National Signing Day, getting into the depths of the football editions. Next week, later in the week, we're going to get back into basketball. We're going to get at least one hockey show coming up here quick, and we're going to try to get one hockey show with a hockey guest every week starting in January. So definitely hit subscribe if you are a Minnesota Gophers hockey fan. This is Kane Rob signing off. Row the boat. Sky Yuma. Go Gophers.